Are you tired of watching shows that only give you general social media theory and expect you to figure out how to apply it to your own industry? Join us for this week's episode of Social Chatter, the industry's longest running social media marketing news talk show. Not only will you learn the latest breaking news, but you'll also gain practical advice on how to apply it. Now here's your host, Christian Karasiewicz.
Welcome everyone to Social Chatter, your weekly social media marketing news talk show. This is episode 217. Today, I'm joined by Jim Fuhs. You've probably seen him on quite a few of our shows. He is the owner of Fusion Marketing. Very clever, by the way. Jim, really like the name there. So we have a new guest this week. We've got Michael O'Neill. He's a podcaster, actually. He's got the Solopreneur Hour podcast with Michael O'Neill. We'll drop that in the comments for this live video, but he's got 796 episodes. Pretty amazing. So I'm going to go and bring on Jim because we do have a hard stop today. We're going to do the show a little different, but we've got a hard stop very shortly in about 30, 45 minutes. But Jim, how are you doing this week?
Hey, I'm doing great, Christian, and it's great to be on the show with you this week. Very excited about some of the topics, especially what Michael's going to talk about with the shortcuts. We were talking about it before the show. I had no idea some of the things you could do, so really excited to learn about that. Would be nice to be in a warm climate like I know you are, but really just glad to be able to pinch hit for Phil today because I know he's traveling.
Definitely. And so, and I appreciate that, or actually we appreciate that. I know that. So thank you so much for helping us out this week. And actually, I think you've helped us out a couple of times actually in the last couple of months. So I really appreciate it. But you want to go and tell viewers about our guest this week while I finish up a couple of things behind the scenes?
Oh, yes. So Michael is joining us from San Diego. And Michael, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
We sure can.
I don't know what if it's this mic working or that mic working or something. So anyway, so I host a show called the Solopreneur Hour. It's been going for about 6 years now. Like you said, almost 800 episodes, which is crazy to think about. I've done a lot of interviews with a lot of very cool people. Just over 10 million downloads for the show. It's a very deep dive, long form interview format, kind of like Joe Rogan, but with an entrepreneurial spin on it. And I do a lot of speaking all over the world about podcasting, about automation, emceeing, and that kind of thing. And I got a pretty mean racquetball backhand.
Hey, we should play sometime. I play some tennis, so like I'm sure.
Yeah, I grew up playing tennis.
So very cool.
Yeah.
So how did you get started, by the way, in podcasting? I guess let's start with that. Like
we literally don't have enough time for that story. It's about a 27-minute story, but the super long story short is I was doing some podcast work behind the scenes for somebody else.
Yeah,
and I ended up having lunch with if you guys know who Pat Flynn is from Smart Passive Income.
Yes,
also lives here in San Diego, and we just chatted for a couple hours just at lunch, and he stopped in the doorway and he goes, "Dude, thank you." And I said, "What?" He goes, "I never get to do that." Because we didn't talk about business at all. We didn't talk about Smart Passive Income at all. We talked about life and girls and cars and fashion and everything else. And he said, "I never get to do that." And I thought, wouldn't that be an interesting idea for a show? What if I brought people on and we kind of talked around the thing that they're known for?
Right.
And that's really how the show kind of evolved.
And and that's definitely one of those things where just overall, I mean, just trying to get to know people. A lot of times, like for instance, Jim and I, like we work together a fair amount, but like we don't know that much about one another because a lot of times we're all on that hamster wheel, just trying to keep that business going. So if you haven't checked out Michael's podcast, by the way, be sure you do that. We dropped the link to that in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and Jim and I are actually we're going to start talking about some of the topics this week. Michael, we're going to bring you back on here in a couple of minutes to talk about some of the automation with some of these tools. And then, so thank you so much for stopping in this week, actually. So
I mean, you might leave me on just to comment. Otherwise,
sure.
I'm just twiddling my thumbs.
Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
You got to have somebody to roast you guys. So you might as well.
That sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds great. So Jim, where do you want to start, by the way, this week? We had a lot of topics we wanted to talk about.
Well, let's start with in some aspects the elephant that is came out yesterday on a lot of social media feeds, and that's Facebook Pay.
So what do we have going on here, by the way?
Well, so Facebook has decided in their infinite wisdom of trying to be all things to all people that now they want to be the platform that you can pay your friends and family and other businesses with and still use your Visa and your MasterCard and even your PayPal, according to the article. So I'm not really sure. It could have some benefits. I personally am and I know Michael mentioned at the beginning before we came on, and I'm with Michael that, I don't trust Facebook to begin with. I think there's a lot of people that don't trust Facebook. So now you want to give me more of my financial data. So I'm not really sure if it's going to take off like they would like it to.
Yeah, Michael, what's your main payment platform, for example? I mean, I know we talked offline about this. We talked about like how there's, Apple Pay, there's Facebook Pay now, there's Venmo, there's PayPal, there's Cash App by Square. I probably left out a couple of other ones. I think there's Stripe. Do you have a preference, by the way, of one that you use over another, and maybe why you use that?
I use Venmo and PayPal a lot. PayPal for probably 15 years. And PayPal, I feel like it's the company that everybody loves to hate, but it really does serve as the backbone to a lot of people's businesses. Everyone's got a story where PayPal did this, or in fact, recently they made a mistake and they kind of messed me up because of their mistake, but that's neither here nor there. But recently, like I would say in the last 3 or 4 months, I've been using a lot of Apple Pay. I just bought a flight to Denver and used Apple Pay for it. And was like, I find myself using it, at all the grocery stores and 7-Eleven and stuff like that, the gas station, just because it's easy. It's 2 clicks and I go like this, or if I'm wearing my Apple Watch, which I barely ever do, right. It's really easy, and it feels pretty futuristic to me.
Definitely. One thing I noticed, by the way, from you mentioned, I know this is Facebook Pay, but I know you mentioned Apple Watch. I feel personally, I'm glad they're coming out with all these payment options, letting people pick whichever platform they kind of want to use. But I feel that like when I'm in public, for example, say you're at Trader Joe's has Apple Pay, but a lot of people they don't really get to experience it from a customer. And when they do, it's like light bulbs and everything else going off. I kind of feel like I'm glad Facebook's doing this, but there are already way too many solutions out there. And I don't think they've caught up with consumers yet. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think what happens is once there's 1 or 2 news stories, the people that are considered experts in the field or people that are really paying attention are typically like, it's going to be fine. And then the rest of society is like, oh, there's no way I would give my credit card info to those people. And I think it really has that negative wave for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they're always going to be battling that. And like you said, Jim, Facebook hasn't done themselves any favors with how they've handled our personal data. So I don't know. Yeah. This is one of those things where I feel like they just solved something that nobody was clamoring for.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I know I didn't feel like I needed another way to pay on Facebook. I mean, and you've even started to see some platforms create communities off of the Facebook platform, because I know Facebook had started talking about, this would be a way for you if you want to run a paid group that you could use. I'm sure that'll be their caveat. You have to use Facebook Pay. Yeah.
Have you ever gone through Venmo and looked at everybody's transactions? It's fascinating.
Oh,
like it's really fun to go through their feed and see what people are paying for.
Yeah,
it is. It's legitimately like one of the more amusing social media scrolls I do.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would say this. I mean, overall, I'm glad Facebook's doing this, but I tend to same boat that you all are in, which is I don't necessarily trust Facebook with all of this data. I mean, even though they tell me like, oh, hey, it's secure. They're, a supposed trusted company here. But at the same time, I mean, Facebook doesn't really need another payment platform. I think where this really, to me, benefits some of their other products. I think that Instagram and WhatsApp, for example, which are not getting Facebook Pay at the moment, it's just rolling out to Facebook and Messenger, and then eventually Instagram and WhatsApp. But I think that's where the value is going to be at. especially for, I personally think WhatsApp. Coming from somebody who like uses WhatsApp quite a bit, I see a lot of businesses, they are constantly, like, hey, they have a product for sale. They do something cool, like they might send a bunch of emoji with whatever their products are. But for me, like, they need an easier way to check out. And a lot of people, oftentimes on WhatsApp, they're just doing the antiquated way of like, oh, hey, yeah, I'll make a note and then you can pay me that way. So I really wish that this would come to WhatsApp and Instagram first, and then kind of move into Facebook and Messenger. But Facebook wants to obviously get it that way. So
I like what you said about groups, though. It makes sense for paid Facebook groups to leave them all on the platform, and I'm sure they'll have tracking where people, have paid, have access to the group. If they don't pay, the group access gets cut off. Like, that is actually, to me, fairly useful. So I know there are some people that have gigantic communities that really run their businesses from that Facebook group. So that, now that you said that, it kind of makes a little bit of sense to me.
Well, I think the only issue, though, that I think some of these group leaders have is, what is the cut going to be? Is it going to be more than, say, a Square fee or a PayPal fee? I have not done, because I haven't given my credit card to Facebook yet, so I don't know what that fee is for
that
using
would shock
it.
me.
Right.
It would shock me if they were way more expensive than PayPal or Venmo, because it's so easy to use that stuff.
Right. Yeah. But I also think
just say it's worth it.
Yeah, I also think, to Christian's point, I think this is that first step that Facebook announced at F8, where they're creating this closed loop system. And I think we're going to be talking about the catalogs here that are coming to WhatsApp, where everything becomes their closed ecosystem, where you can shop and communicate and do everything else without having to leave the Facebook ecosystem, so that in theory you wouldn't even have to have a website as long as you're in their system.
Right.
So that's Facebook Pay. Very simple feature to use. Obviously, if you want to tap into this, make sure you update your Facebook app. Go to your settings menu within the Facebook app. That's going to be under the hamburger icon, actually, and then select Facebook Pay. And at that point, and by the way, you can also do this on the website as well. If you go to pay.facebook.com, add your payment. They accept, obviously, credit cards, debit cards, and PayPal conveniently. And then next time you go to use a payment, you'll have the option to use Facebook Pay. And one useful feature I thought was the fact that you can control which apps have access to Facebook Pay. So I do kind of like the integration there, but that's Facebook Pay. A little more of it, obviously. Obviously, it just came out, so it's something that it will take some time for it to be implemented. But overall, very useful feature, I think. If you are mainly in the Facebook ecosystem, it'll work across a bunch of their products. So obviously, as I mentioned, it'll work across Messenger and WhatsApp and Instagram at some point. And also right now, it's also going to work with other features. It's going to work with people paying for like in-app purchases for games, obviously some of your standard stuff, in-app purchases. It's also going to work for some Facebook pages, for some pages, as well as Facebook Marketplace. But that's Facebook Pay. So with that, Jim, you want to switch gears?
Yes. Let's go with the catalogs feature next, and then I think we should get into Michael's stuff, because I think we could talk about that for the rest of the show.
Yeah, definitely. And so let's do that. And while I bring that up, by the way, just a quick reminder to everyone who's watching, if you are watching or listening, actually. So for those of you who want to make sure you don't miss any of the topics we talk about, you can go to socialchefs.com/daily, and that will give you an option to get on our newsletter, where we will actually talk about some of the topics that we didn't get to cover as well today. So I'm going to go and bring up this WhatsApp feature, and I'm really excited about this. But I'm excited about this because I think WhatsApp, it's a feature that Facebook has really kind of shelved for the longest time, and so now they've actually got a really cool feature here. They've got WhatsApp catalogs for small businesses. To me, this is pretty amazing. I mean, basically, it's letting you get out of just standard text communication, which is typically what most people are sharing on WhatsApp. Sometimes they share photos, sometimes they share videos, but it lets you have a storefront, obviously, if you have the WhatsApp business app. And I've got this actually pulled up here, where you can list out not only your product details, but also your catalog, along with description, pricing, and a title, obviously, and a photo that people can then make a purchase. So what do you guys think about this one? What do you think, Jim?
I think it's a great move by Facebook and by using their WhatsApp platform, because I think it's going to bring more businesses onto the platform, because now they're going to have a way that they can communicate with their potential customers in a visual, more descriptive way. And I think that will obviously, if you're new to it, you get that initial, you're kind of ahead of the curve from everyone else. And so I think it might give people a better chance to be found.
Definitely. Michael, what do you think?
I don't use WhatsApp a ton, so this isn't super relevant in my world. But now that I'm looking at it, I'm looking at that article as well and thinking that is actually really cool. I think it gives a small business a global reach. So it reminds me a bit of, it's almost like Etsy meets Yelp meets Messenger or something.
Yeah,
it's got this interesting combo of different platforms that can be applied, and I definitely see it. It's really easy for a lot of people, because a lot of people do use WhatsApp. Really easy for a lot of people to be able to click on that and see a pretty decent little mobile website where you maybe don't even have a regular website. Like this could really run your business.
Yeah, because for example, like where I'm currently at, I mean, people basically, they don't have websites. They use their social media channels, and they primarily use WhatsApp to do all their communications and their transactions. And a lot of times, if you're like, hey, like you mentioned, we were talking offline, you mentioned, business cards, for example. People don't have business cards. Anything they do give out, they're like, oh, just WhatsApp me. Here's my number. Like they're very open to giving out their number to, building that communication. They don't have to. They also kind of gives them a good touch point, because then they can sit there and actually get their number entered in the person's phone, versus saying, well, hey, here's my business card, and then wait for that customer to actually enter their information, and then reach out to the business. A lot of times business cards, they kind of just get stuck in a drawer and they kind of just stay there. But I like this feature a lot. One part that I'm somewhat fascinated with on this is, if I'm looking here and I'm looking at who this is available for. So you do need to have the WhatsApp business app, which is great, because actually, if you do use WhatsApp, you can have two different numbers, one for your business, one for a personal account, two different apps. This is available on iOS and Android. But the part that really sticks out to me, we've got Brazil, Germany, India, Indonesia, Mexico, the UK, and then the US. And to me, that's actually really surprising, I think, because the US is, in my opinion, is not a very heavy WhatsApp place. Like a lot of people, like, you say, oh, do you, Jem, like, for example, do you use WhatsApp? And most of the time people are going to say, well, hey, I only use it when I go travel overseas, for example, versus being there in the States. So, Jem, do you use WhatsApp at all for your business?
I actually had started to use it a little bit, but I had not downloaded the business app yet. I do have a client that's in Vietnam, who's actually a US guy, but because he's in Vietnam, that's the easiest way for us to communicate without, paying an arm and a leg. And then my mother, who's from South America originally, she communicates with a lot of her family through WhatsApp, and she'll communicate with me on WhatsApp instead of Facebook Messenger, because it's easier for her. She doesn't want to learn Facebook. So I it's maybe use it a little bit, but this will probably make me definitely dig a lot more into it, because I think I could see where you could help clients that want to get, especially international reach, a little bit ahead of the curve.
Definitely. And, and for me, like the part that, like I said, I'm very surprised that who they roll this out to initially. I would have easily thought that they could have rolled this out to a number of other locations well before the UK and the US. And like more developing countries, for example. I think that would help them get a strong foothold, because those people are primarily using WhatsApp on a daily basis versus, people that kind of casually jump in and jump out of the platform. But so that's WhatsApp catalogs for your small business. Pretty fantastic update. Very easy to get. Just get the WhatsApp business app from the App Store. So with that, I'm going to actually switch gears. We're going to have Michael talk about, actually, I'm going to go into tool time real quick, and then we're going to have Michael talk about some of the ways that he's using one of these tools this week. So tool time, basically, for those of you who are new, tool time is our, our way of bringing about two tools or equipment or hardware or, software, basically things to help you as a business get more out of your business. So you're not having to constantly feel like, hey, I've got all these processes and I need to, like learn how to implement all of this stuff in my business, and then obviously not have time to do anything else but let your business run you. So one of the tools that we actually want to talk about this week is a tool called Apple Shortcuts. Now, it's an app that is already available if you're already if you're on your device already, if you didn't know it. So it's already on there. Just look up Shortcuts. It used to be called Workflow because that was the company that built it. Apple purchased it, but Apple Shortcuts. What it is, in a nutshell, is a macro-based system. And a macro-based system is just saying, well, hey, like, let's say I walk into my room. When I push this button on my iPhone or iPad, it runs a series of events. I'll use the example. You might walk in your room and it might say, okay, turn the ceiling light on, turn the lamp on, and maybe turn your ceiling fan on, for example, if it's a connected device. And so when you push that, it will basically run all of this with one tap of the button. However, when you apply this to business, there are a lot of useful ways you can use the Shortcuts app. And so, Michael, I know you specialize a lot in this. I think we were talking beforehand, you had like 50 plus shortcuts. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you and have you talk about the app and some of the ways you're using it to get more things done.
This is one of those things that once you learn that it's on your phone, you don't go to bed till 3 a.m. for 3 weeks in a row. Ask me how I know. It's like Siri meets Zapier, right? Because, well, honestly, that is actually the truth, because anything you can dictate into your phone can be sent over to Zapier to any one of the however many apps they have, 3,000 or whatever that they're connected with. Mm-hmm. So for demonstration purposes, instead of using the word Siri, I'll use S word. Otherwise, my phone will continually pick up as I say, hey, S word. So the quick overview of the kinds of things that I use Shortcuts for. I'll get up from the couch. It'll be time to go to bed. I'll say, hey, S word, let's go to bed. And all of my lights shut off except the one light in my bedroom because I have Lutron in my house. Okay. So it's all programmed that that's a macro that everything turns off except like just the one bedside lamp that I have next to me. I'm notoriously super flighty, ADD, entrepreneurial brain. So I have ideas all the time for things. I need to get them out of my head as quickly as humanly possible. So I can now say, hey, S word, new task. And the dictate text will pop up. I just say, make sure you take the laundry to the dry cleaners. And then it ends. What happens right there is then it connects to my Trello, which is a project management tool, connects to a certain board within Trello, adds a new board to the top of, connects to a list within Trello, adds a new board to the top of that list. So when I, wake up in the morning, I see my brain dump from the last day or two, and I can sort and organize that stuff in appropriate places. But I did it in a way that it happens so quickly where I just have an idea and I go, oh, hey, Siri, new task, don't do it. Okay, she didn't. And it's in and out of my brain as quickly as possible, and I save it. Very business practical versions are at a conference. Okay. If I'm having a conversation with someone, I can say, hey, S word, connect us. 3 screens pop up on my phone. The first screen is what's their email address, and I give them the person's email address I'm speaking to. Then it says, who's the rock star you're talking to? I say, well, I'm talking to Jim. And then what did you talk about? And I said, well, we were talking about sponsoring my new build, my new car build on YouTube. And what happens automatically is an email gets pre-populated with, hey, Jim, we're at the same conference together. Just to trigger your memory, we talked about, and it'll put in the thing that I just talked about. Then I have all this information. As soon as I send that email, it prompts me to take a picture. So I take a picture of me and Jim, which then also goes to another Trello board called Conferences. Okay. And that board has all the pictures of everybody I spoke to, what their email address is, what we spoke about, what their company is. So now when I need to go back and follow up, it's all available. And finally, and this is the creme de la creme, as they say in the creme business, This one took me about 3 weeks to build because there's some real stuff happens here. There's some real programming that needs to happen. And I'll explain a little bit about what the process is as I create one. But I have a bunch of private coaching clients that I help with their businesses. And what I do is I do back-to-back 30-minute coaching calls every other Tuesday. So they're, 8 in a row. And there's only 5 minutes in between. So there's no time to like write down a bunch of notes. And the problem I was having is there was no accountability on my end or on their end. There was no record of what the phone calls were. We would just talk. I'd be like, hey, so what's going on this week? And that was that. I said, I've got to fix that. So I wrote out in sort of long form what I wanted to actually happen. So now what happens is the second we hang up the phone, I hit my shortcuts button for my coaching calls. It brings me up a list of all of my private coaching clients. I select one, and then a dictate box pops up, and I say, and this particular dictate box is for the overview of the call. We talked about this. Stop that. Another box pops up. That's the action items I want them to do from the call. So I say, first do this, comma, then do this, comma, then do this. As soon as I hit stop on that, an email already pre-populated for them is filled out, and it says today's coaching call overview, and it gives the whole thing I just said, then the action items, great call, see you in 2 weeks. I hit send. So they have an email literally within like 45 seconds of us hanging up the phone of what we just talked about. From that point, it connects to my Zapier, which connects to Google Sheets, finds their particular Google Sheet, and then adds a new line of what the coaching call overview and the action items were. So they have this documented record of every call we did, what the date is, what we talked about, what their action items were. And if I really wanted to nerd out hard with it, I could make it send me a text message 5 minutes before our next call with the summary of the previous call that we did. But I don't have a need for that, but I totally could do that. And that would be like one of those Southern preachers that have all the information in their ear, But this is Missy and her daughters are June and Nancy, So I totally could do that, but I don't do that. But that's just like a really brief overview of some of the things I do. Oh, Instagram, hashtags. Like I'll be in the middle of typing something on Instagram and say, hey, S solo tags. And automatically all my Solopreneur Hour hashtags are copied to my clipboard. So I just have to hit paste instead of having to go to notes, find the right note, select the hashtags, copy, paste, go back over to the other side. Let's say that's 35 seconds or whatever. This is about 4. This is about 4 seconds of work. So if I can shave off 30 seconds, I'll definitely do that.
Hey, Michael, quick question. Yeah. So with Trello, did you actually have to use Zapier for that, or that's something you can do right within the short? Wow.
Yeah, Trello's native within Shortcuts, which is cool. There's a number of apps. So what happens is once you download the Shortcuts app, I think it was optional in iOS 12, and I think it comes with iOS 13. And if you take it, can you guys share a phone or where you are? Or not really. There's no real way to do that, is there?
I could probably try pulling up a phone.
Well, at any rate,
yeah.
You have an option at the bottom of Shortcuts. You can sort of see it on the screen there. On the left-hand side is your shortcuts, and then the right-hand side is gallery, and that's on the very bottom of the screen of your iOS screen. And if you look at the gallery, you can just start scrolling through and see how other people are using Shortcuts. There's also YouTube videos. Shortcuts can be shared. Mm-hmm. So I have 2 shortcuts online right now on my YouTube channel. One is the Instagram hashtags one I just spoke about. And then the other one is my to-do, where I'm just walking along and I just use Trello to do a brain dump. That brain dump could go anywhere, by the way. It doesn't matter. It can go to wherever your production tool is. If it'll connect to either Sear or Shortcuts natively or Zapier, you can use it. So another one that's really useful is Instagram Extract. So you can download stories, pictures, or movies from Instagram, like natively into your Photos app, which is cool.
Wow.
That one's really complicated. I didn't write that one.
Yeah, so go ahead, Christian. This is amazing.
Yeah, like I said, it's a rabbit hole kind of situation. So once you understand, put it this way, if you do anything at all in your business that's repetitive, you can consider automating it.
Definitely.
In fact, I had a tagline that said something like "Fire your VA," because this can do. I mean, this is so extraordinary, the kind of stuff that this can do when you really start understanding it. It really does automate. I automate my podcast show notes completely. So as soon as I hit stop recording my podcast, I hit the show notes shortcut. First thing that pops up is a dictate box, and I know that's the title of the show. So I'll say, 798 : fantastic episode with Steve Weatherford, whatever. Hit another one. Then I just speak about what we just talked about. We just interviewed about. I do it right then. So it's in my head. And then appropriate links. It asks me like what their links are. So I'm able to plug them and then whatever the sponsor is for the show. So I typically just do another live read of the sponsor, Kartra.com, everybody, blah, blah, blah. And I do the thing. Once I hit that, once I submit that final one, a new draft in my WordPress has been created with the title, content, all the appropriate links, and then the advertiser. It's already there, already formatted, ready to go. So by the time I just export the show from my tool, it's literally like 5 minutes to get it up online. So it's great.
So do you happen to is that one available to download as well, or something?
The show notes one?
Yeah.
No, not yet. That's going to be my giveaway one. I'm just working on automationisawesome.com right now. Cool. And that's going to be probably my one of my giveaway ones.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is a very useful, the Apple Shortcuts app is a very useful app. Definitely, I would say, as Michael said, like, spend some time playing around with it. I'd say start with the gallery. Like, how did you learn it, Michael? Because I've used it quite a bit as well. How did you learn about it, or how did you just kind of?
I can't remember how I discovered it, but I started going to YouTube, and you can start looking for shortcuts on YouTube because people can share them. Once you create it, it can go in the cloud,
right? And
you can share them. So, I think I just grabbed a couple from there and was like, "Ooh, that one's really cool." There's people that are just like, "Oh, here's 10 useful shortcuts for entrepreneurs." I'm like, "Oh, let me check it out." And then once I understood and kind of deconstructed how a few of them were made, I was like, "Oh, this is all me." So, and I mentioned I would do this. When I create a new one, I work from a complete social engineering standpoint.
Okay.
So I literally think about what I'm physically doing and how I want this thing to actually work. So I'll say something like, all right, I get off the phone and the end goal is I need to record the information from this. So I write the goals, what I want to happen. So I want to record the information from this call. I want the person I'm talking to get that information, and I want trackability. That's what I had written down for my coaching calls one. So I said, okay, well, what happens during a coaching call? So I speak to them, we hang up the phone, and then I have 5 minutes. So do I have time for an email? Probably not. I want to be able to, should I type it? If you're a fast typer, then you could just have a box pop up and you thumb it out and you shred through. I don't type that fast, but I can dictate well. So I said, okay, I want a dictate box that comes up, and that dictate box will be the overview of the call. Okay, great. Now I need one for action items. Do I need them to be lined out? No, I can do that within dictation. I can say first, comma, do this, period. Then, comma, do this. And that is how it writes, and that's fine. Then how do I get the trackability? Well, I'm going to need to go to Zapier. So that needs a certain connect on Zapier's end to be able to do that. Okay, let me learn how to do that. And then it needs to connect to Google. And that Google Sheet has to have a specific API that goes with it. So there needs to be some programming logic on Zapier's side to choose the right person and then assign that person to the right spreadsheet. So that was probably the longest piece that I had to learn. But once I figured out that I wanted it to go on a spreadsheet, it was just a matter of, oh, can this be done? And then once I learned it could be done, I'm like, how do you do it? And then you sort of reverse engineer everything. So think about your end goal. Yes. If your end goal is, I want my virtual assistant to get a summary of this meeting or these emails or whatever, think about what the individual steps are that have to take place, and then just work backwards from there.
Definitely. And the other thing you'd also do, I guess, also if you're like totally new to this and you're like, well, hey, this seems really cool, check out the gallery. And then the other thing I'd say is open up the apps. Cause if you have the iOS or Android, iOS or iPad, or sorry, if you had the iPhone or iPad device, open up the Shortcuts app and actually look at them and try to deconstruct them as well. I know a lot of the stuff you're talking about, some of it takes a lot of programming. Other ones, I mean, they're just literally drag and drop, like, if this, basically do this.
Yeah. The hashtag ones on Instagram is super easy. It's literally all it does is it has a text thing that's all the hashtags you would use, and then copy and paste to clipboard. That's all it is.
Yep,
it's literally a two-stepper, and that one's on the YouTube. You can download that one.
Another great thing about these the shortcuts, you can add them, so you can either put them in the Shortcuts app. The other thing is if you use your phone a lot, for example, what a lot of people will do is they basically will bury a lot of their apps, meaning they put them in folders, they put them on different pages. There's too many things. But what you could do is actually you can set these as home screen icons as well. So that way you could press on something. If you don't use Siri, for example, sorry, hopefully I didn't trigger anybody's phone there.
You didn't say hey first. It's okay.
So basically what you could do then is you could set up a home screen of just the most used apps, for example, or the shortcuts that you create, and then run them there as well with just, the press of a button. So fantastic.
Something just dawned on me. It'd be really funny if you were like a radio broadcaster and you just kept saying, "Hey Siri," just out in the world, because it would just trigger a million phones at a time.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
that'd
Alexa.
be the best prank.
Yeah, Alexa's another one actually as well.
Can we talk about the Instagram list categories thing?
Yeah, sure. You want to talk about it? Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's really interesting to me.
Sure. Okay. What do we got going on there, basically?
Well, it looks like, remember when back in the day when people recommended that you sorted your Facebook friends by lists, and that lasted a few years and then it went away?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
This is a way that you can sort your Instagram friends by lists. And I'm kind of looking, there's a list that's like latest interacted with, different categories, everyone. Yeah. I'm sure you'll be able to make custom lists, like potential customers or people that might be your avatar in your business or whatever.
Yeah.
But like there's one called least interacted with, which is basically Instagram just telling you these are the people you should be unfollowing because no one's paying any attention to your content from here. It's a pretty interesting idea in terms of being able to increase engagement on your Instagram account. And it looks like it's being endorsed by Instagram.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating to me.
And I do have this pulled up. Hopefully, I don't know if people can actually see that. If you're watching, you'll basically see we have basically it's a series of screenshots where we've got the following list. I like the idea of Instagram actually implementing something like this. Again, I think the key thing we have to keep in mind is a lot of times when Facebook will roll things out, they will basically take the same feature that was on Facebook and port it to Instagram and do a little bit of adjusting to it. But I personally, I like this. When Instagram, for example, they're testing this right now, but the fact that it shows like least interacted with, for example, that's one thing you want to, it's a game basically. When you add, for example, followers, or you go follow people, you don't want to follow more people than are following you back, for example. So you have to build some engagement with people. If people aren't necessarily interacting with you, that might be somebody you don't want to follow, for example. So why let that person take up a slot if you're not really interacting with them, for example? It's not about having, more people, like just random people follow you. They're never going to interact with you.
Well, and I think with them doing away with likes here in the US any day now, I'm not sure if my likes have disappeared yet. Would this be that way where who's really interacting without you having to really dig into the detail of your analytics? So I think it would be a great idea, because I think there's some angst with people about like, well, how do I know if people are interacting if I don't in a sense have that social proof of a like on a post? So I think it could be a great tool.
Definitely. And so hopefully at some point Instagram will actually implement this feature. Again, they're testing this feature. It's the following list categories feature. So it's letting you basically see different categories and different, almost like Twitter lists in a way.
I love Twitter lists. I don't know who uses them, but I use them all the time.
I do.
A lot of people, they should use them. But the thing is, I think a lot of people, I think it would be cool if Twitter would have kind of set those up automatically for people and then said, hey, this list, now you need to actually sort these people. A lot of times people just build things up. And I think for Twitter lists, I mean, they're tucked away. They're fairly buried. I think they're extremely useful to be able to quickly go through tweets and whatnot. They were very useful for Facebook when they had the list feature as well for like close friends.
Yeah, so, that was weird that they eliminated those. I really liked those, actually.
Yeah, it was a great way to just basically go through newsfeed.
One of my favorite things, if anybody's into pretty much any sport, it doesn't matter. But I like when I'm watching like a primetime NFL game, I have a whole list of NFL heavy hitters. They're like all the journalists, all the NFL journalists on one list. It's like 150 people or something like that. And it's awesome to watch that feed as you're watching a game because they're all watching it and they're all commenting live on it. And you get all this great insight as you're watching the game. It's just a way that I like to use, probably one of the practical ways I use a list.
I think, I mean, and the thing is, I think the key point that, kind of you're making here also with this is the fact that like a lot of people, they don't spend the time setting up those lists. For example, they make it as like, oh, it's like my third and my fourth step to watch the game, for example. They don't have a way to really balance the two, but by actually being smart and setting up some sort of automation or setting up, and again, it's not about automating everything. It's about automating the parts that you really shouldn't have to spend your time on, for example.
For me, it's about automating everything.
Yeah. I would say this. Automation is great. Just don't automate everything. At some, make sure you slowly wade into automating as much of your life as you want to.
Can we post any links for anybody? Like, how do you do that? Oh, live comments? Is that how you do it? Can I post anything?
Actually, I think you can comment there. If you can't, you can actually go to facebook.com/social chefs and there's and just drop in the comments.
I'll just post it just because that way, if anybody else is a football fan, you can subscribe to that list. What's it called? Social Chefs.
Yeah, facebook.com/social chefs actually. And I can actually I'll actually grab it and drop it in for people that are listening or watching here.
Oh yeah, there we go. Got it.
Do you have it or do you need me
to comment and boom.
I just found it subscribed.
Fantastic. So Michael, I know you said you have a hard stop, I think as well, right?
Yeah. I got a call in 8 minutes, so I got to roll.
Awesome. So it's been a pleasure having you on, by the way. Stick around, by the way, everybody who's listening or watching. Jim and I are going to go over a couple more things, but fantastic having you on. Thanks for sharing those automation tips. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, at Solo Hour on all the socials.
Okay.
And solohour.com.
Awesome.
Where they can just yell out their window.
Fine. And thank you, Michael, for giving me a reason to stay up till 3 a.m. for the next couple of weeks, because I can see that's going to happen.
I will apologize in advance to anybody, but trust me that once you get it, you go, and then it just gets really exciting. You nerd out really hard with it.
Then you're like, oh, hey, I can automate all this other stuff. And then
you will literally start looking for things to automate. And between because what Shortcuts does is it just opens up Zapier.
Yeah.
And right now when when my RSS feed publishes for my podcast, so it's just all completely automated. It posts to Twitter, 3 Facebook groups, LinkedIn, makes a text file that I can then upload using Grum to Instagram, and sends an email out to the client that was on the show, to the person that was on the show, thanking them to be on the show. I don't have to touch any of that. I just hit publish on WordPress and it all happens. And it's all formatted specifically for that platform. It's not like using, what was it called? Buffer or anything like that, where it's all sort of the same thing. Yeah. These are all custom formatted for each of the platforms. And dude, once you get that going, it's crazy. That's all you want to do is just automate stuff.
Well, we'll make sure to be in touch. I'm looking forward to chatting more about automation as well. But best of luck on your next call, actually. So
thanks. All right.
Thanks, Michael.
You guys keep on rocking.
You too.
I'll see you later.
Yeah. Bye. So we have one more tool. By the way, Jim, you want to cover the last tool real quick?
Yes. You
Okay.
wanted to go with the Chroma?
Yes, let's talk about Chroma real quick. So tool number one, by the way, for this week for tool time was the Apple Shortcuts app. As you can see, there's a lot of different ways that you can automate parts of your business. I also dropped some links, by the way, into the Facebook post for those who are watching us live on Facebook, things to make it easier for you to, for example, download images from YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. Actually, that's images and video. There's also a way to convert videos to animated GIFs automatically with the Apple Shortcuts app, as well as those people who actually need to scan their receipts for their business. There's also an automation as well there for the Apple Shortcuts app. I also dropped in the Shortcuts user guide that Apple also has available online as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring on our last tool that we wanted to talk about. This is an app called Chroma Stories. And so, Jim, do you want to tell people about this one, what it does exactly?
Yeah. So Chroma Stories is a great way to really up the ability of your stories in a really good way. Of course, I think it's only available on Apple. So sorry for all those Android folks, as far as I know. But I just thought I really liked the visual richness. You can have your own fonts and all these other things that aren't always easy to do within the native Instagram itself. So I think it's really a great way to create more stories, and I think that's where a lot of people are headed. So I think it's that was my initial take. I didn't get a chance to play with it yet, but I definitely downloaded it. I think it's another great tool that you've picked for people to keep an eye on.
So there's a couple of things about Chroma Stories, a little bit about the background of this. This is actually made by people who previously worked at Instagram. So this is a very good mobile app to have on your device. That's the first thing. So it's built by people that get it, that understand what the purpose of stories is, or what the purpose of stories are actually, and how stories can be useful. Now, one of the challenges is, and kind of going back to Michael's point here about using automation, like how do you actually build, for example, a Shortcuts app? So the way Chroma Stories would work is like, well, what problem is it solving? And so in their case, one of the biggest challenges for a lot of people that want to create stories content is they fire up their camera, and what do they see? They have whatever's in the background. They have so audio. There's no like creative element to it for the most part, because a lot of times people are like, hey, I'm not artistic. So what you could do with this is, it gives you a couple of things. It gives you access to a lot of templates. So lots of different templates, different styles that you can adapt for your business. The other thing you also get filters. So great, I've got some filters, I've got some templates. You can add different text tools, for example, to make your text stand out. So I almost like look at it like this. If you take the Instagram Stories platform in the current state and you use it just like it is, it's got functionality. But if you want to take it further and you want to make your stories creative and more engaging and eye-catching and get people to actually want to then tune into them to check out what it is you have going on, this is where you want to level up to an app such as Chroma Stories. Now, in addition to this, the other feature that it adds is that it adds this thing called dynamic motion presets. And those might seem, let's see. So dynamic motion, basically, for a lot of people, if you're not familiar, if you do any sort of video editing, like heavy video editing, it often requires very expensive, high-end software and machines. And so, or basically software and hardware, in order to make it very useful. So to make things like really, have some motion, like you have a certain pan of a camera, for example, or maybe something might turn a little bit. But what dynamic motion basically does is it allows you to apply motion directly from the mobile app without actually having to be a video editor and knowing how to apply these effects to your videos. So that's built into this. As you get access to animated stickers. Obviously, you get a video trimmer built into this. You get, obviously, as I mentioned, powerful text tool. You can do custom backgrounds and so much more. It's Chroma Stories. And now I do want to briefly talk about the price. So it's $4.99 a month. That will unlock up to 250 plus templates. It'll unlock the ability to have like 50 plus custom fonts. So you aren't just using the same fonts over and over and over again. But it also adds In addition to that, so it's $4.99 a month, but it will also add special filters and a lot of other creative elements to the Chroma Stories app. Now, the other side of this, though, it's $4.99 a month. You get, I think it's what, is it 7 or 14 days, Jim? I think that people get with it.
It's a 7-day free trial.
7-day free trial, $4.99 a month if you want to go monthly, or you could get the whole thing for the whole year for $20, basically. So that's what, $1 something a month, I think. Is that what that works out to be?
Yeah, it's something. Yeah, definitely. It's a nice savings to go with the annual.
It is fantastic. For $20 a year, you get access to some template, as I mentioned, templates, fonts, all sorts of creative elements that you can then implement into your stories. And I mean, heck, even if you just use one of them for 1 month, I mean, most people would probably charge you $20 just for one of those. So I really like this app. Something I'm definitely going to start using more of. But it's Chroma Stories, iOS only at the moment. So with that, anything else you want to add, Jim? I know we had a couple other topics we didn't get a chance to talk about this week that people can get by going to socialchefs.com/daily to get the newsletter. But is there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I think first of all, hopefully people realize that you guys now have a podcast, and I was happy to leave you guys a review the other day on the Apple Store there. So people should make sure they subscribe to that, because a lot of great information. Not to mention the Alexa flash briefings as well. And I think what your show does a great job of, and this is what happened again today, is there's so much out there that people don't even realize has occurred. Like I had no idea, I just said, oh, shortcuts, I don't have time for that. But now after hearing about it, after seeing what Michael's doing with it, it's like, wow, this is game-changing sort of stuff that people really need to pay attention to, especially as small business owners, if they want to make their productivity, efficiency is one thing, but to be more productive. I mean, I loved his idea of what he does at conferences with that as well.
Oh,
and so,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I thought that was great. I mean, it's, if anything, it's as we know, it's always changing. Everything's always changing. StreamYard's added some new stuff. I know we had talked a little bit about YouTube. That's another, if you want to call it breaking news, YouTube with that lawsuit. You now have to go into your YouTube settings and say you can do it by episode, or I just went and did it by my channel. My videos are meant for adults, not kids. I mean, because you're getting a lot of restrictions if you're saying that you do, and some people will do it for kids, but that's, there's big fines involved if you don't pay attention.
No, definitely. And, I'd say with the Shortcuts app, I mean, there's a lot, like, this is what I would recommend. So I'd say download the Shortcuts app. If you don't have it, just look up Apple Shortcuts, or just look up Shortcuts in the iOS App Store. If you already have a current iOS device, it's already installed. Just search Shortcuts. You can just go to your home screen. You can actually just swipe down by going from the top to the bottom. It'll pull up the search option, pull up the Shortcuts app, and then just start playing around with it. I can give you some examples here. For example, I've got some for, you could press a button and it'll automatically let you do a voice recording and save it to Evernote. You can resize screenshots, for example, directly on your mobile device. So there's no need to say, well, hey, I'm going to put that on my to-do list when I get home. I can easily do this on my mobile device. There's the file downloading we mentioned, the ability to make, turn videos into animated GIFs, the ability to turn photos into animated GIFs. Like, for example, you and I could actually make one right now where we say, okay, open the Photos app, open the camera, take pause for a certain amount of time, take photo 1, pause, take photo 2, pause, take photo 3, pause, 4, so on and so on. And then at the end, it will actually make an animated GIF. Like, you don't have to have, it's not like, oh, I have to wait until I get home to do this because I only have certain software there. So you could do that. There's ways to do tip calculations. Let me see what else we have here. So currency conversions. So this actually will eliminate the need to have a lot of other apps as well on your device. So you can put everything into the Shortcuts app if you want to. But it's a fantastic app. I'm sitting here looking at all of the shortcuts I have installed and got quite a few here, but definitely a very useful feature app to actually learn and to start to use. And I'd say this, you might look at it and be like, oh, this is very overwhelming. Start with something that you use every single day and see if there's a way to automate it. If there's a way to like take that one little step out of there. For example, let's say it's the weather. You get up in the morning, maybe have it where like when I get up in the morning, obviously make my alarm go off, bring up the current weather based on, using my location. Therefore, you don't have to unlock your phone, search for the weather app, pull up the location and so forth. That's all automatically there for you. So that might be a basic thing to try. But with that, Jim, I want to thank you very much, by the way, for filling in for Phil this week on Social Chatter episode 217. Any last thoughts you want to share with viewers before we wrap things up?
No, but I will say thanks for sharing the Rocket book with me. And that's another app that I know you've talked about previously. It's actually a book you can write in and make it a PDF. And I actually been using that. And I know I've got to get my orange tabs for the whiteboard. So, Christian, you always are a wealth of knowledge. And thanks again for having me on. And hopefully we get you and Phil on at the same time, maybe on the Tim and Jim show. Maybe we can do something here before the end of the year and talk about 2020 planning, if that's something you guys.
I think we definitely should. So with that, by the way, I want to thank you again for stepping in this week. Again, for sharing your knowledge. We'll have to see what we can work on going into 2020. But for those of you listening, for those of you watching, you can go to socialchefs.com/SC217. That's going to get you the blog post recap. That will go out tomorrow. It's going to have links to all of the articles we talked about. We're going to talk about how it can actually help you as a business owner, as well as what actually happened this week. We also talked about the two tools, Chroma Stories at socialchefs.com/go/Chroma-stories. And also the Apple Shortcuts app. Again, if you don't have it, socialchefs.com/go/shortcuts-iOS. Both fantastic tools. These are tools that, I love using them, especially the Shortcuts app. I mean, it's one of my favorite things. And don't forget, as Jim mentioned, the podcast and the Alexa flash briefing as well. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Fantastic having you on, Jim, as usual. For those of you who want to tune in next week, by the way, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at facebook.com/social chefs or youtube.com/social chefs. Our guest is going to be Jennifer Quinn, and she's a live video professional. I don't like to use the word expert because there are no experts out there, but live video professional. She goes by the username Jenny Q. That's JENNYQ. We're going to have her on 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Facebook and YouTube next week. But with that, I'm going to wrap things up, and we will see you all next Thursday. Thanks a lot for tuning in.